thank you all for coming. This is our first Whalar From Home. So thank you for joining us as we road test this new format during these interesting times. We've got Jessica Joseph, our talent manager for Whalar Stars, interviewing the amazing Adanna David, doctor and influencer. So first off, I'm pretty sure everyone's following our house rules, but if not, please mute for us if you can and keep your camera off just so that we can maintain connectivity. There is a box up at the top of your right-hand corner. It looks like a little caption box. If you want to use that to ask Jess or Adanna any questions throughout this, if you could just state your name and then have your question underneath that, that would be great. We're looking at around about an hour for this, but as we said, this is our first one, so we're going to road test it. We might give you back some time at the end, which I'm sure we'll be grateful for. But if you want to wait till the end of the Q&A or use the chat box in between, that's totally fine. So let's introduce ourselves. So I'm helping moderate. You won't be hearing much from me, but I'm our head of marketing. This is one of the first initiatives we're doing during the crisis. So if you have any ideas or thoughts, or maybe you want to partner with us, maybe join one in the future, then let me know. After this interview, we're also going to be sending an email with some tips on how to work with influencers and a bit of guidance. And you'll also have details for any questions. So that's enough about me. Jess is our host for today, and then we're going to have Adanna as our special guest. So Jess, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, just first off, thank you all for joining. It's quite exciting to be the guinea pig. Try this for the first time. So yeah, just a bit of background about me. A lot of the brands that are tuned in will have probably dealt with me on email. We've done some campaigns together, probably most likely with Adanna or kind of someone else on the roster. I have been working in talent management for 4.5 years now. So moved to London from Yorkshire, started working at a place called Glean Futures. So we represented some of the bigger YouTube talent at that point, was there for 2.5 years, built up a really fun roster, worked on a lot of brand partnership deals, some publishing deals and podcast opportunities. Kind of joined Whalar Stars at the forefront of the start of the business. There's 3 of us on the team, and there's now 6 of us working on the UK team with a roster of 35 talent, of which Adanna is one of them. So we've been working together for 1.5 years. And Adanna is, I guess, a Wonder Woman. She is a doctor, first and foremost. She's an entrepreneur, so she's been very inspirational. We've loved working together, and we've done a lot of brand campaigns now. But this is kind of the first thing we've done as a bit of a panel opportunity, so it'll be fun to interview. So I'll pass it over to Adanna, who can explain a bit about yourself.
Okay, so from me again, thank you so much to everybody who's taking the time to join in. My name is Adanna Steinacker, although my online name is Adanna David. A lot of people say David, but it's David. And it's just a fusion of my first name and my husband's first name as content creators. So I started putting content online in about 2014 when I was still in med school. And then I think it just happened because a video of and I dancing went viral online, and then we became content creators. So it happened by chance, but I created content around medicine and working as a junior doctor, and then we got married, had kids, and somehow I became a family content creator. But it's really just lifestyle. Like, this is the way that my life has progressed. And like Jess said, I've been with Whalar now for about 2 years, and yeah, I'm very happy to be working with them.
Oh, okay. So we've prepped a couple of questions, obviously based on the Whalar From Home kind of ethos and our new video series. But as Joe said, we'll be doing a bit of a Q&A, or if there's any questions that feel appropriate to weave in and out, we'll go through them. So if you want to use the chat function, just let me know where you're from, name, and we'll obviously ask Adanna some questions. But I guess to start off with, in the spirit of Whalar From Home, you obviously work for yourself. You kind of self-employed in terms of Medics Abroad and being a content creator. But how has your usual routine changed over the last couple of weeks, and how are you kind of adjusting to it in a work capacity? I know you wrote a LinkedIn article which did kind of went really well on some work from home tips, so it'd be good to understand a bit more about that from you.
Yeah, so for me, working from home wasn't the adjustment that I needed to make, because the nature of my job and this industry, most of us already are used to working from home. But in light of the current situation, getting actual work done became very difficult because of the 2 toddlers we have that no longer can go to school. The first couple of days, like after the schools were closed, felt like an extended holiday. So it was fine. And then we realized getting to midweek that, David and I realized that we weren't actually getting any work done, and it wasn't productive. Like, we would be with the kids and one person thinks, oh, I want to go write an email, and the other person thinks, oh, just mind the kids, I want to write an email. It was just a total disaster. And then we sat down, had a conversation, and decided to make a plan. So at the moment we're on a AM PM shift where and we rotate weekly just so that it's fair. So on last week I was on AM shift where I would work in the office, and David would engage the kids in activities, and then we would swap for after lunchtime for the PM shift. And that's the way that it's kind of worked for us. But it's just the realization that, a lot of us have just found ourselves in this situation, and companies need to adjust accordingly as well, because the only reason we're able to do AM PM is because David has had a chat with his managers as well, and they understand that having toddlers at home and working is really, really difficult. So that's where we've seen ourselves. We're working half the time we should be working, but we're trying to make it very productive.
And has there been any incidents where you've been having meetings and things that hasn't worked from home, or actually so far been kind of as successful as it would have been had COVID not have unfortunately happened to us all?
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Has there been any kind of negative impact so far in terms of working from home / working as a working mum?
No, well, I wouldn't call it negative. It's not negative. It's just not being able to go through your list. Like, someone like me who loves to have a list and feel accomplished when I can tick off my to-do list, it's become increasingly difficult to do that. But I have to tell myself, the same way that I try to be there for my audience who are in the same position, that this is what everyone's going through and we all need to adjust. So rather than look at it as a negative situation, I'm grateful that I can get to spend that much time with my kids. And, I think everyone's pace of work is going to be readjusted. Sometimes it's going to be slow, and everyone understands, because we're in a position that we've been forced into for the first time, and everyone's going through it. So I wouldn't really look at it as negativity per se. It's just a lot of readjustments that need to be done.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So off the back of that, and on the topic of children and this current situation, you chose to act fast and release something that's quite fun, and write a little children's book about COVID / coronavirus, and guess how we talk about that and navigate that with children, or how you're doing so with your children. So it'd be good to hear a bit more about that. I think if you're looking at the presentation screen, you'll see some of the animations from the children's book. So yeah, what was the reason for doing for releasing that?
Yeah, so for me, I was inspired by having to explain to my 4-year-old why he no longer is going to school. So he and my 4-year-old, he goes to a forest school, like a nature school, and they're always in the forest. It's always very adventurous. So at some point, when the extended weekend became prolonged, like, we got questions like, why am I not going to school? And, David and I, we came up with a few sentences that you would say to a toddler, like, oh, we're staying at home to be safe, or we're staying at home so that we can, just made up stories, really. And then, me understanding that children learn a lot about the world through stories, I got inspired to write a book, because I thought, well, there's a lot of parents with young children struggling to explain why their lifestyle has changed so dramatically, so fast. So I thought for me was to provide a bit of context. And if you read through the book as well, I wrote it in a way that the kids feel like they're part of this mission to combat coronavirus. So they're staying at home to build shields to protect us against coronavirus. They're washing their hands, so that's learning basic hygiene. and they're saving the elves. An elf is a universal, supernatural fictional character that every kid can relate to. So my inspiration was just helping a lot of parents with young children, provide a bit of context to their children. Yeah.
I think it might be a good point for you. I guess some of the brands here might not know your kind of background in medicine, and that you also run the Medics Abroad company. So it might be good to give a bit of an overview as to your background in medicine, which also I think Kitty just asked a quick question about as well. So kind of with your medical background, do you feel that you've got a responsibility or kind of a knowledge in that field to share some of your thoughts in this uncertain time?
Well, not directly, because okay, so I'll give you a bit of context. So I'm a doctor. I first started my work in emergency medicine, and then I had switched to plastics and reconstructive surgery right before I then took a step back. And the only reason I had taken a step back from medicine was I had Noah, my second son. I was on maternity leave, and I was inspired by my experience as a medical student when I took a trip to Kenya. So then I launched Medics Abroad during that maternity leave, and it took off. It took off better than I had anticipated. So then and surgery was taking a lot of my time. Like, I would go a week without even seeing Kian awake because of how crazy the schedule was. So then I thought, well, I will explore entrepreneurship and see the way that it goes. So for me, I'm not going to claim to have any, I'm not going to claim to bring my medical background into, the coronavirus pandemic, because I'm not at the forefront, currently. But of course, I completely agree with all of the measures that are being put in place to stop the decline, like social distancing, basic hygiene, and that is it's a common sense thing. Really, it doesn't even have to do with medicine, but yeah, that's about it, really. For me as a doctor, and feeling a bit bad that I'm not at the forefront to help fight the pandemic, I really just thought writing a book, putting it out there for sale, and all proceeds going to, children and the fight, or the support towards the effects of coronavirus. I think that was my way of contributing.
Great. Cool. And then I guess we'll delve into a little bit more about your background as a social content creator. And I guess again, off the back of this book that you've created, which you did as a digital book and posted on your social channels for download, including a new group that you have created for Facebook called Famfluencers. So obviously this group is for families, not just content creators, to join and feel like they've got a bit of a network or a community, not just for now in this time of kind of COVID, but also for the future, and being able to lean on other parents. So it'd be good to know a bit more about why you created the group and what you're kind of hoping to achieve with the Famfluencers community.
Yeah, okay, so I'm a family content creator just because that was just the way my lifestyle was going. I documented things online from when I was married to when I had kids. And I think so automatically, just for branding purposes, I fell into a family lifestyle and parenting niche. But the thing is, because I started creating content since 2014, before I was even married or had children, I have a very diverse audience. I have people who are not married, who don't have kids. So ultimately, like, putting out all of my family parenting content on my platform, makes me consider the people who that information or that content is not relevant to. So when it came to lending our support towards the effects of the pandemic, writing the book, sharing tips, giving advice to parents on the activities they can engage with their kids, as well as working from home, having a structure, I just felt like, well, Instagram wasn't enough for me, because not everybody will relate to this content. And so then I was inspired to start the group. And when it came to thinking about what to name the group, and the group is for parents by parents. And I thought, well, every family is an influencer. It sounds very cheesy to say, but as parents, we influence the lives of our kids every day. Like the way that my sons grow up to be, the mindset they have, what they're exposed to is because of me. So I am influencing their lives, and so is every family around the world. And so I thought, well, for influencers, like you're influencing families all the time. So then I thought it was a great name to call the group. And I had gone on Instagram, I had checked the hashtag, and I realized there was not even one single post about famfluencers online. And I thought it was yeah, it's a great blue ocean for me. Great trend, yeah. But the group is to help and to support families. I when you look on my blog, I'm intentionally creating content relevant to a time like this when it comes to activities for kids, how to cope, the effects on your relationship as a couple. All of that will be shared in the group, and most importantly for social contact, because parents have never needed a community as much as we do now. Like we're supposed to educate, entertain, and mind them all by ourselves. It's a lot. You do need to know that you're not alone.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of questions, so Kitty and Gemma, of a similar nature that we were obviously going to move on to, which I guess everybody is talking about in this industry right now. And that is, of course, it's an uncertain time for us all, but especially for brands working on advertising campaigns. And how do they navigate working through marketing and advertising at a time that doesn't feel maybe particularly right for them? Yeah. However, I guess we've been looking at some research over the past couple of weeks, and it seems that time spent on Facebook, Instagram, and even WhatsApp over the past 2 weeks has already increased by 70%. Yeah. So with that in mind, what are your thoughts on whether brands should be still working on influencer campaigns? What are you feeling about that?
Well, you're right in saying, it's very uncertain times for everybody, for influencers, for brands. It's very uncertain, and people are scared. People are scared of the future, and I will subjectively say that brands are also scared about the messaging of their campaigns, and that's why a lot of the campaigns have been placed on hold. Rightfully so. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy, it's a theory in psychology that really explains to you human needs, and at the bottom of that is physiological needs like air and water, and above that, but still at the bottom, your safety needs. And that includes health. That's currently what we're going through. People are literally scared of basic things like health and how they will survive if they did get the coronavirus. There is that panic. So I understand that you, as a brand, you have to take that into consideration when advertising, because it's not happy days as normal. People are panicking. However, putting a campaign on hold is completely different from readjusting your messaging to suit the current situation. Like, your customers need to know that you care about them. This is not a time to be silent. You need content. Like, where most influencers now are, taking time to be very active, creating content around this period. And I think that's what brands need to do. And if you look at it from a marketing perspective, we are the voice of brands. So if in the past we've come out to speak about your awesome product, particularly when you're talking about performance campaigns and getting our audience to purchase stuff, now is the time to let people know that we're in this together, that you care about them. So it might not really just be about, rolling out campaigns just so everything is back to normal, because it's not normal. It's about reinventing yourself, readjusting your campaigns, and then let us be those campaigns. So I think that's also a very good avenue for everyone to work together. There's a lot of brands doing it now. When it comes to, I think Burger King is an example where they're rolling out recipes of how you can, make a Whopper at home. these are ways to get people engaged.
Yeah.
So I would, if I was to give a simple answer, the answer is yes. I think campaigns should go on, but we as influencers will help you with the tone, with the messaging, and we will be the advocates. But you really do need to take the current situation into consideration.
Yeah, agreed. I think Kitty said what is our opinion on that, and as a company or as an agency, what are we seeing brand campaigns following? And I guess the same answer as Adanna, really. Obviously, the initial panic did cause a lot of campaigns to be postponed or put on hold for the time being. We're trying to work with some of the ongoing campaigns that we've been working with on long-term basis. How do we relook at that brief? How do we look at the campaign messaging and make it kind of appropriate for the time? Obviously, one of the main things that people are still going to be interested in and a consumer of is, food and drink and food delivery services. So, how can we work around that? That's actually something that's going to be helpful to consumers that they want to hear about. Let's think about pitching campaigns that obviously are beneficial for the consumer, and also trying to just instill a bit of normality as well. So we don't want to, be everything talking about coronavirus all the time. How can we build around that, and how can we do some brand awareness pieces that maybe are not just focused right on coronavirus? So yeah, we see taking each day as it comes, along with the talent, advising as best we can on what is an appropriate caption, or how can we brief on its head, and getting on a call with the brand as well as the talent, making sure that everybody is happy with the messaging before anything goes ahead.
Yeah, and my LinkedIn article yesterday was replacing fear with inspiration. So everyone is scared, and brands as well. I can imagine that brands are scared about the way they'll come across if they carry on business as usual. Yeah. But rather than being scared, you can get inspired by how you could convert the one product you have into a multidimensional product. So for example, how can you adjust your product or your service to the current situation? What can you do from home? If you're, for example, let's just say you have a product and your typical ambassador is an influencer in a different niche. Now we're having to stay at home. And if I use myself as an example, as a family creator, I'm having to be home, I'm having to educate my kids, I'm having to engage them in activities. This is the reality of a lot of parents. So as a brand, now is the time, not just for the sake of marketing, who's going to buy your product, but really as a support, like what influencers can you utilize to spread the message that you actually are considerate of the current situation? Not just your customers need to know that you're there for them, not just when it comes to conversions.
Definitely, I would agree with that. I think we've gone through a few questions here, and we've got a few more on the chat. So I think if anybody wants to ask a few more questions, I'll finish off with my last, but if you want to still have a think about what we'll do at the end, then we'll open up to the Q&A. So we had on here just talking about juggling, being a working mum, being an entrepreneur, working with medics abroad, and obviously you found a routine that suits you. But do you have any tips for trying to keep a positive mindset, or keeping a specific kind of routine for us that might not be used to working from home and that are missing that kind of community of the office? What kind of working from home tips would you give us to take away from this conversation?
So, I mean, like I said in one of the earlier articles that I had written about, coronavirus, a guide to working from home, a few of my tips are just around, routine, creating a routine that, closely mirrors the routine that you had when you would normally go into your workplace. So rather than thinking I'm going to sleep in now until 10 a.m., wake up the same time that you'd normally wake up. Secondly is the clothing that you wear. Like if you're going to lounge in pajamas or loose clothing, your brain feeds into the relaxation, and that might impact your productivity. Also, things like starting at the same time and ending at the same time. making sure that in your home you create a proper workspace, even if it's just a table, but a corner in a part of your house that is left specifically for work, and ideally one that has a lot of light coming through so that you don't just feel very drowsy. Yeah. Also, things like taking breaks when you should take breaks. Having the same time, as I had mentioned, otherwise you could fall into the risk of either working too much or too little. But a structure, and my ultimate tip would obviously be making a list. As much as everyone's very digital, I still go by the very old school pen and paper. And every morning I make a list, and I separate my list between urgent versus important. And I know that urgent things are things that have a deadline today and I need to do it. So I get on with those first. So these are just little habits, little things that you can incorporate into your day that ultimately play a role in your productivity.
I would agree with all of those. In fact, probably today's the most I've dressed up for a work from home day, not gonna lie. So next question from me would be, thinking about not just the coronavirus and brands that might be newer to working with influencer marketing that have logged on to the call, what would your advice be to a brand looking to work on their first campaign with an influencer, and how should they approach that?
Well, the great news is agencies like yourselves exist, right? So the advantage is that you have a cohort of talent that you can vouch for, that you find very credible. So the first advice would be to approach an agency who kind of has a network of talent. But prior to that is the clarity from the brand to make sure that you're picking influencers that have a voice similar to your brand. It's not difficult to find that, but you really do need to do your research and make sure that you are, working with an influencer that really does believe in your product or your service, or whose content is similar to what your brand can fit into. But ultimately, approaching agencies like yourself, having the initial meeting, yourselves are in the best position to advise them, really.
Definitely. I would say one of our kind of most successful campaigns together since working at Whalar would be with the brand Vitibiotics, who I think are on the call.
Oh, yeah.
A brand that we've been working with on and off for many years, like 2 years since we've been working together. Yeah. And the reason why that works is because it's a brand that you genuinely use in everyday life. Exactly. Step by step, learn what was successful from some campaigns, and then worked really together on a brief to work kind of then stepping it up to 2 months at a time or 3 months at a time. And I think that's been the most successful way to approach a partnership, is like, let's pick a product or a person that really personifies your brand, and then let's build on that and the successes, and then what didn't work out so well, and actually work that into a really nice long-term strategy.
Yeah. And I think the success, there is huge success in long-term ambassadorship as well. I've said this from the beginning, having working on, multiple touch points with the one influencer, has the potential to really give a huge credibility to your brand. And I say this from examples. So if I look at some of the influencers that inspire me, there's one or two brands. Well, if I think about one particularly, there's one or two brands that she's worked with constantly, that anytime I hear that brand, I actually think of her. Yeah. And I attach all of the feelings I have to set an influencer to the brand. So I think she's powerful, she's amazing, she's brilliant, and automatically I see that brand that way. So it's very important to do your research, find out what the influencer you're working with and what they're about, and ultimately like a long-term sort of ambassadorship, so that people don't think, well, it's yet another ad, rather than they truly believe in this product. Yeah,
I would agree with that, definitely. Okay, I don't think we've got any more questions in the chat. Oh, we have, sorry, they've completely just not.
There's a lot of them actually.
Okay, first off, we'll do Lucy Nichols Burden. Hi all, I'd love to know, Jessica and Adanna, what are some little social campaigns you've seen from brands that have caught your eyes recently? So what has resonated with you the most during this time?
So I'll show you. I'll show you actually. If you have, well, it's not really sponsored campaign as it is like messaging from a brand. So when you see brands like, McDonald's that would have the end separated to kind of highlight social distancing, I think that it's a really strategic and brilliant advertising. You see people like Burger King as well that, they've actually cancelled off Home of the Whopper and they've put Stay Home. That's also like, advertising that I find very inspiring. I think it was Costa Coffee that's delivering about 1 million cans of, I don't know how many, I think 1 million cans of coffee to NHS staff that are helping at the forefront. Brilliant. So these are
with you on that one is the people that are doing the kind of social good. So as well as also thinking about how can we be a part of advertising, also what can we do for the good of everybody else. It's also nice to see. Yeah, I agree with that. I liked the Costa Coffee initiative, and also yesterday, so I think it's the brands that have got strong branding that are really benefiting from this. There's the Guinness one, which is,
I was gonna say, I just thought about the Guinness one.
Like that a lot.
Yeah, I love that as well. The stay at home, I love that.
So from Emily, we've got a simple question: do you feel social media may become a more positive place in the current crisis?
Well, so far it has, because I'll tell you, there's a surge in the use of TikTok just to kind of bring hilarity and positivity to the current climate. So I think that's serving more as a positive platform because, it's just like an escape, for you, for your mind, and to kind of see what other people are doing. And I had actually put that as a poll on my platform, if my audience want to see like happy normal posts, or do we want to see everything that is about being bogged down by coronavirus? And over 78% of people want to see positivity. So that's what social media is doing now. A lot of people are just going there to like kind of escape from the current reality of what's happening. So I do feel like that. Yes,
I would agree with that as well. I think even on my feeds, I've seen such an increase in kind of real content on Instagram, just funny things, let's not focus on the real serious aspect. I'm watching the news to hear about the coronavirus updates. I don't then want to log onto Instagram and Facebook and hear more and more kind of fake news. And I personally have started unfollowing or just muting accounts that I think actually you're not bringing any kind of positivity or a good view on this situation. So not interested in seeing that for now. I just want to see some kind of light-hearted, good fun.
Like I'm watching a lot of comedy online and just bursting out laughing by myself when the kids are sleeping, and I love it.
And the amount of Instagram workouts, I've never seen as many, but I think it's good. Everyone's getting involved.
I think so.
So we have a question from Will here that says, should brands be giving influencers more or less creative freedom during this uncertain time?
Well, 100% more. First of all, I'm pro give influencers creative freedom when even things weren't even this bad, but more than ever now. Yes, certainly, because we understand our audience. No matter what your campaign brief says, we understand our audience, and we know how, based on our content and their feedback over the years, we understand what sort of messaging is right on our platform. So you should be giving influencers, creative freedom. Of course, oversee everything. No one's saying, let an influencer just do whatever they want and post it. Everything will be double checked by you, but giving an influencer the creative freedom will do more good for your brand. Yeah,
definitely. And then an interesting question from Pauline at Mbooked. So it said that those who invest in marketing in heavy times of turmoil do actually do better in business after the crisis. So we see those then who cut marketing budgets now do poorly. So what do you think about that rationale? Do you feel that brands should actually be investing more in marketing now whilst we're all consuming more media? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, 100%. I think brands should invest. And for me, it's not even a measure of whether more or less. It's the comparison of, should I stop advertising or should I continue? So 100%, you should not be on pause.
Yeah.
This is a time to reinvent yourself and re-strategize the campaign messaging. This is definitely a time to do that. Brands need to invest in marketing. But as I said, you have to take into consideration what's happening, the fact that people at the moment are at the bottom of a pyramid where we're worried about our health. So you can't ignore that. But now is the time to think about creative ways to bring your brand to people or to customers who to new customers that you can potentially convert. So if I give an example of a hair salon, for example, now would be the time for the owner of a small hair salon to pick up a camera and record a video about how to get your highlights touched up while you're at home. That's amazing, because then your customers know that you really do care about their hair and the fact that they can't make it to you. At the same time, you're engaging your customers, you're making them feel like you truly care about their current situation, and you're potentially retaining them for when things go back to normal.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many avenues that so many different brands could take. You know, how do I make my work from home situation the most comfortable it can be?
Yeah.
How can I invest in my self-care? I know I've seen a lot of skincare and beauty still going ahead, because that is important. You know, we want to leave this lockdown thinking, right, I'm ready to go back and smash getting back to work, as it were. I know we're all still working, but you know, there's lots of ways that you can sensitively handle the messaging. Actually, it still be a benefit to the consumer.
Well, like when it comes to the food and beverage, I think I made the example earlier, but in my LinkedIn article that I posted yesterday, my example was, you know, for example, if when it comes to the restaurant business and you have people who are lovers of, you know, Japanese food, and you own a Japanese restaurant, but now your customers can't make it, you could set up a challenge, like, you know, how to make sushi from home, and that can be content either created by the brand, or that's where you utilize influencers to bring your messaging to the public. So there's avenues to work together, taking into consideration the current climate and being sensitive to that.
I think that's a really good point that we've not actually gone through yet, is actually content only is a great way now to involve influencers in campaigns. So maybe you don't want to push a huge message on an influencer's platform because you feel like a paid ad is not necessarily the right time, but how can you use them to use their creativity to create content for your channels? So can you send out a brief that's just content only? So do you want a family to create something using your product, and then you can be using that content on social? So content only is actually a really good way around maybe more sensitively using influencers during this.
But also, when it even comes to advertising an ad, I also have a feeling that it really depends on what you're advertising. It really does, because if we're going to, if I get approached by a brand to, you know, channel a campaign, I mean, based on the guidelines, I still have to put ad, whether I'm paying or not. You know, it could be ad gifted, ad God knows what. So there is advertising. So the question is it really about the hashtag AD, or is it really about you not wanting to get involved at a time like this? You know what I mean? So I think even hashtag ad is not an issue if the campaign that you're channeling really does
the genuine campaign,
you know, inspire positivity. So I'll give you an example. When we talk about Costa Coffee that delivered, you know, 1 million cans of coffee to NHS staff, you know, Costa would probably utilize influencers when it comes to advertising a certain new product that they have in their cafes. But you can also utilize influencers to bring to the same audience the awareness that you are getting involved in the effects to, you know, in the effects of coronavirus. So if they're doing something that charitable, people should know about it. And in this industry, the voice of brands are influencers. So if I don't come across it on LinkedIn or any professional news, when it comes to social media, how would I know that Costa is delivering millions of, you know, coffees to NHS staff? I wouldn't know that. So I could very well work on that campaign and say hashtag ad, but making people more aware of the charitable efforts that brands are doing. So it's all about the campaign. It's all about the campaign. It's not about hashtag ad. It's really what the campaign is.
And then we've got one last question, I guess, that flows quite nicely from that, from Laura at Phillips, saying, do you think there are any type of product that couldn't be marketed or talked about by influencers during the current crisis?
Well, for me particularly, any products that channel like going out, honestly, it's very unfortunate, but maybe fashion might be one of the industries that might be, slightly affected, because if you're going to advertise outfits for, certain events, or like, a party outfit or a party shoot, like maybe now is not the right time because nobody's going anywhere. Right. So I don't know any, I can't really tell you for a fact any specific, brands that might be affected, but really the voice of the campaign and what you're trying to get people to see or to take home from your advertising has to be one that reflects our current situation. And if you're going to advertise about people going someplace, then now is not the time.
And I guess the other thing for brands to think about, and what we would advise the talent on our roster to do, is don't just jump at a brand deal because you might think it's a quiet time. I wouldn't usually do this, but I'm just going to do it because it's a brief. Like, you need to remain genuine to the fact that obviously if you weren't going to work with that person out of this current crisis, then you wouldn't be doing it now. So keeping that consistency, making sure that you're always staying true to your own beliefs and like who fits the brand as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's a really good message to finish on there as well. Thanks so much. So 45 minutes in, that feels about right. Thank you everyone for sending in questions, and it's been great to have you all join us from our homes. It's been really interesting, Adanna, some great insight there, and Jess, you're a fantastic host. So as we said, we'll be following up. Everyone that was on the call will receive an email with our guide to working with influencers during the crisis, and you'll have myself and Jessica's details on if you want to chat more. But thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you all. Stay safe. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.